course, this week started with the announcement from Rishi Sunak that there will be new primary legislation, a new law, to swiftly exonerate and compensate those victims of the Post Office Horizon scandal. More details we're expecting after Prime Minister's questions. I think we're going to get a statement from the Post Office Minister, Kevin Hollinrake, who's actually been highly involved in this. He's also meeting with the Post Office Compensation Board later this afternoon as well. Well, discussing all of this and a few of those tit-for-tat exchanges, and it looks like some new nicknames ahead of the next general election from both sides. Discussing this is Peter Cardwell, our chief political commentator, with us in the studio, and still also with us Benedict Spence, who's Conservative commentator. Good afternoon to you both. Well, where do we start? As expected, announcement from Rishi Sunak, but it kind of, you blink and you miss it. There wasn't much detail, was there?
It was very quick. Some primary legislation that's going to be a major piece of legislation that's going to overturn and compensate these people who've been so badly affected and so unjustly affected by the Horizon scandal. The £75,000 compensation is definitely going to be music to their ears. That's just the start. Yep. I think it could be up to £600,000.
Well, 600,000. We spoke to Lord Arbuthnot, who's an MP featured in the TV drama earlier. He's talking about 600,000 doesn't touch sides for most people in terms of their losses, and that will be a bare minimum. But the 75 is the sort of interim money.
Payment. Just get it out there, get them get something there until they can work out the rest of the scheme. So yes, we'll hear there's an urgent question that will come from David Davis, who is a Conservative MP who's been heavily involved with this as well, and Kevin Hollinrake, the Post Office Minister, will answer that, and more meat on the bone that has been signified on this.
I mean, it was welcomed by Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, as part of his first question. I wonder if he had two sets of questions planned, because he went on Rwanda, which he knows is something where he can really get under the skin of the Prime Minister, sorry, with the personal dig at him. But I wonder if he would have, he had a whole set of questions on the Post Office as well, in case there wasn't an announcement, and then sort of basically sitting there saying, well, hold on a minute, why aren't you dealing with this?
Yes, although it's tricky ground for Labour as well, because this has gone on for 25 years under a Labour government as well.
He was Director of Public Prosecution.
So it's not the happiest of grounds for a number of people. Lee Anderson as well, an MP, asking a little bit earlier about Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, who's not there today in Parliament for personal reasons. So it's uncomfortable ground for a number of people, and this definitely needs to be sorted out.
But again, I wonder if that just gets to the bottom of actually why this didn't become such an issue until an ITV drama, is because actually it's a bit uncomfortable for everybody. Just don't talk about it, because no one comes out of this smelling of roses. In terms of what we heard, what the announcement, I mean, Benedict Spence, you know, it's what we expected, some sort of new law. There have been some issues, though. People have raised concerns about, Parliament, MPs overriding a court decision. This isn't the Criminal Cases Review Board or going to the Supreme Court, right? But politicians overriding this. Do you think that's justified? And does it matter that there will be, undoubtedly, some people among those 700 plus who were wrongly convicted, some others who were rightfully convicted?
I mean, that's a tricky thing, because obviously you don't then want those convictions to be overturned. It's why I say that it does need to be done very sort of carefully, but it's important, therefore, that the resources are allocated properly, so that there isn't just a sort of a carte blanche response, because that's always when bad laws are made, bad policy is made, is when they, there's always the joke, isn't there, about when a law is made with somebody's name attached because some sort of tragedy has happened. That usually ends up being a bad law because it's rushed through. And so you want to avoid that sort of situation. And I know it's very frustrating that, therefore, justice is delayed and therefore not entirely served, but that is why we have the system that we have, and it is better than most on.
You and I were discussing earlier that it's too delayed now, years and years people waiting. And again, bearing in mind that, people, this has been going on for the best part of 20 odd years, and long, almost 25 years, and really, they have known about this for a very long time.
There's an interesting political point in this as well, in regard to what happens next week when Rwanda comes up, because if the government is saying that they're going to pass legislation in Parliament which would override the judiciary, override the court, and then you have everybody supporting that, because I think Labour will probably support this legislation. I'm sure it'll be scrutinised, but they'll probably support it. Then next week, you can't exactly stand up and say, well, we can't have parliamentary legislation that overrides the rule of law or overrides what the courts do in regard to Rwanda. So that'll be a really interesting
link,
I think, especially for Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, indeed. And there's no doubt at all, Keir Starmer was very keen to go on Rwanda. He started with, and after that I was a bit confused who he was referring to, but he started with a little sort of veiled attack, well, not thinly veiled attack, on Rishi Sunak, pointing out that this is exclusive from Harry Cole in The Sun, that basically when he was looking at going for the first leadership contest in 2022, Rishi Sunak had actually basically was trashing the Rwanda policy and thinking about dropping the Rwanda policy.
Now, Rishi Sunak's line on this is that as Chancellor, he needed to look at it robustly and see that if it would work and so on. But there's absolutely no doubt that there are not true believers in the Cabinet at the moment. The Home Secretary is not a true believer. The Foreign Secretary is not a true believer. The Prime Minister is not a true believer in this Rwanda plan. He is
I'm certain Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor.
No, well, we know.
So the four great officers
saying. So we're in a situation where the Prime Minister is pushing and is hamstrung and is boxed in completely by a policy that he will have to defend. If he moves in any direction, it's that sort of stalemate thing in chess. If you move in any direction, you're in check. And he, next week, will somehow need to try to get this through committee stage, try to get through the third reading. It's going to be really, really interesting because he can't move in any direction without upsetting some of his party who may vote against.
And he's facing rebellions on both sides. We were talking to Tim Montgomery, founder of Conservative Home, a little bit earlier on the show, pointing out, Boris Johnson, this government, effectively, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, I've lost track. How many the 70,000 Prime Ministers we've had since then, and now Rishi Sunak, ostensibly a majority of 80, now down to about 60. But even with that, that's a huge majority. You can get lots done with a huge majority like that. Actually, he could face losing votes because he's got rebellions on both sides.
Although the real conspiracy theory, if you want to get really into the criminology of it, criminology, I can almost say that word, is that there are amendments from the right of the Conservative Party that they want to come in, but the left of the Conservative Party, the One Nation, are only putting amendments in so then they can say no to both, even though the left don't really want them. So therefore they can say no to both sides and get it through as it is. That's the real conspiracy theory.
Again, it's the game playing. But the irony being that even people like me who support the principle, we should be able to get rid of people we don't want and process them overseas. Even we don't think that it's actually going to achieve anything.
Yes, I mean, that is definitely what I think a lot of people are thinking about. The real support for this, I think, isn't there anymore for this policy, and Rishi Sunak is definitely hamstrung by it and has to go forward and really can't withdraw from it, even if he wanted to. There will be people who say, yes, the Rwanda plan's a good one, but really the focus for a lot of people is on the backlog.